welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and as usual, we have a fantastic show for you tonight. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by some of the best sports writers from around the region. Paul Frumelt from the Fairfax Times, Phil Murphy from Digital Sports, and BJ Kubaroulas, a contributor to the Washington Post. But before we get to all the news and notes from around the region, let's first thank the folks that help make this program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. And also special thanks to Craig Sturbutzel for those fantastic photos that you see throughout all of our episodes. Don't forget you can get copies of this program and all of the games we broadcast from throughout the region at PressBoxVideo.com. And you can check out our website with our Video Vault feature. You can become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page. And please do send us any news, story ideas, comments, and suggestions to our email address. Well, before we get into football, a couple of news and notes that we want to share with you. First of all, we mentioned this last week, but again, want to remind you that this is a very special weekend for Stuart High School. They're having their 50th anniversary celebration this year, and during halftime of the Stuart-Yorktown football game, they will be retiring the jersey of former Stuart standout Charlie Garner. He played in the NFL for over a decade. We will be there covering that event, so hopefully we'll have some great footage for you next week. Also, congratulations to the Westfield golf team. They are your 2009 Northern Region champions. They came from behind to win, edging out Madison. Also, congratulations to Chantilly's Jisoo Park. He was the individual winner. Also, congratulations to Pat Full. He is the new Director of Student Activities over at Oakton. Most recently, he was an assistant principal over at Woodson. Okay, well, we've held you in suspense long enough. Let's go ahead and jump into football and show you what the Concord District standings look like after week 6. So, of course, everybody now into district play, so 3 wins, 3 losses. You see Robinson coming up with a win, as well as Herndon and Westfield. So let's break down each of those games for you, starting with one of the big ones, which was Robinson-Chantilly. Now, you see Robinson still at their perfect 6-0, but Chantilly was leading this one at the half, 14-7. Then the second half, those 2-star running backs from Robinson, Connor Riley and Jared Velasquez, scoring 2 touchdowns apiece. Guys, with those 2 running backs, and then Mike Lopresti, who can definitely throw the ball when called upon, Robinson is looking really formidable at this point in the season.
Thanks, Monica. Paul from alongside the Swami. Phil Murphy from digitalsports.com. We mentioned last week when we ranked our offensive lines, everybody had Robinson because of the fact that they can run the ball so well. Connor Riley with 3 touchdowns, Jared Velasquez with 2 touchdowns. Can these running backs be stopped?
Well, I mean, they can be stopped. It's hard to contain them. You thought in the first half, Chantilly came out, held them to 67 total yards, of offense in the first half. Now, Robinson comes out in the second half and just bludgeons them. Now, that stat was skewed by an 80-yard punt return. They only had 2 yards to go for a touchdown. Chantilly stopped them in the first half, but I think the key is how this team runs in the second half. Connor Riley is a punishing running back. We go to the highlights. Here is the aforementioned punt return. Chantilly's first drive. They get into Robinson territory. They're actually passing the ball very, very well this year, actually in recent weeks. And here's Jared Velasquez. Paul, his initials are JV, but he's far from that. 81-yard punt return, fielded at his own 17. And for you math majors out there, you can tell he didn't quite make it to the end zone. Danny Lauro catches him behind, beautiful ankle tackle at the 2-yard line. Connor Riley would punch it in to make the score 7-0. But Chantilly driving, first play of the second quarter, capping an 11-play, 95-yard drive with that 1-yard Mike Ferris touchdown run. I wish they would run a wheel route with him so I could say Ferris wheel. I've been waiting for that all season. 6 weeks is enough. We're just going to call it on a dive play. But Chantilly later on in the quarter, Salo Jan stuffed at the line, and oh, Paul, we are flying solo. 77-yard touchdown run for Solomon Jan. Oh, baby, that's what I like. Chantilly's up 14-7 at the half, and mentioned they outgained Robinson 219-67 in the first half. But Chantilly's schedule has been brutal. They've had South County, Woodson, and now Robinson. So this team comes in at 3-2. They're a lot better than people think. So 14-7 at the break, but Robinson first drive of the second half, third play. It's just 48 seconds in the second half. It's a little blurry. Having some trouble seeing Jared Velasquez, and apparently the defense is as well. 20-yard touchdown run for Velasquez. Robinson on this day, 3 scoring drives of shorter than 1 minute and 10 seconds. They were really able to move the ball quickly. Now, later on in the quarter, next Robinson possession, trick play, ball gets handed to Connor Riley behind his back on 3rd and 8, and there's not going to be a need to measure. 18-yard touchdown run, his second rushing touchdown of the day. It's 21-14 in favor of Robinson. Ferris would add another touchdown. So score currently 28-21 for Robinson. Just recovered a muffed punt, and Connor Riley gets his 3rd rushing touchdown from 37 yards out. In the last 2 weeks, he has 8 touchdowns, 208 rushing yards. He's got 640 yards on the season. Velasquez, 695 yards. They've combined for 22 rushing touchdowns. Paul, I think outside of Lee, top to bottom, this is the best rushing attack in the region. It's going to take a very big, very physical team to beat them. I think only teams like Chantilly, if they play them again, they'll fare a little bit better. A team like Lake Braddock, teams they've already beaten, are the only teams that really have a chance to stop it.
Robinson now still undefeated, one of only 2 teams in the northern region undefeated. Let's move on. Staying in the Concord District, Westfield had a tough time this year, but Monica's going to tell you they finally get off the snide.
Well, that's right. Westfield coming into this one on a losing streak, and it was senior night for Oakton, but Westfield would not be denied. Everything looked good for them. Offense, defense, special teams, and the player that, in my opinion, came up with the big game was Dylan Doty. He is their do-everything player. They had Brian Kennedy a couple years ago. This year they have Dylan Doty, and you see the numbers that Danny Fignac put up. So, guys, I know Westfield came into this one with a 3-game losing streak. They righted the ship a little bit. This week they do have Robinson, which is a tough team to face, but could the tide be turning a bit for the Bulldogs?
We've mentioned before they're a young team. They've had a brutal opening schedule. The opening schedule moved on to a brutal midweek schedule, mid-season schedule. Just keeps on piling on for the Bulldogs. But when you have that trial by fire, you're eventually, a team like Westfield, a team that is coached by Tom Verbanek and that wonderful coaching staff, you're going to step it up eventually.
Yeah, like you saw during my picks, I kept picking them every week. I was sticking with this team, and then I finally go against them, and they blow out Oakton by 22 points in that game. As Monica mentioned, Dylan Doty was outstanding in this one. He had the rushing touchdown, a blocked punt. We'll get to all that once we get to the highlights. But this team, I mean, they're really turning it around. But to make the playoffs, now they're 2-4 through 6 weeks. They still have Robinson on the schedule, still have Chantilly on the schedule, and then Herndon and Centerville. Those are the 4 games. They have to win 3 of those 4 and then have teams like Lake Braddock, like Lee, a team like West Potomac, who they've beaten to come out and get a couple wins, really help them with those power points to maybe sneak in the playoffs at 5-5. I know every team around the region is hoping that doesn't happen, but we'll see. I mean, the way they're playing now, I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and upset a team like Robinson coming up. We take it out. This is their first play from scrimmage, and this is number 12. Not number 7, not Mikey Glendon. This is Danny Fignac going deep to Aaron Scoville. Hits him with a dart. That's quite a toss. 50-yard touchdown connection there. Westfield up 7-0. Now, this is next drive for Westfield. Brian Montague seems to be stuffed at the line, but Paul, it's shake and bake, and I hailed. 18-yard, what should have been a touchdown run. Terrence Smith saves it at the goal line, but can't delay the inevitable. Danny Fignac would run it in from 1 yard out. 14-0 after 1. Now Oakton back to punt. And Paul, if we're showing an Oakton punt in this area of the field, it can't end well. Ryan pours some sugar on me. I'm hot, sticky, sweet. Blocks the punt. Ashton Moss rolls on it in the end zone. 21-0 to Westfield at Oakton. But Oakton getting it together. End of the first half. Just 1 minute 36 seconds up. Jimmy Boone takes it in for the score. 21-7 at the break. But Dylan riding Doty. He's gelling like a felon. 4-yard touchdown run for Doty. 28-6 to Westfield. Then Doty, next Oakton possession, blocks the punt. Nick Grinups dives on it in the end zone. 35-6. Oakton would score on the last play from scrimmage to make it 35-13. But really, Westfield dominated this one from beginning to end, Paul.
Dylan Doty, even though all through the losses we've seen, not Dylan Doty, Fignac, we've seen his ability to make the big plays. He's been consistent all year, finally gets a breakout. Westfield finally gets a big win. One thing that's interesting is I think that Westfield's district schedule is going to be the easier part of their schedule.
Well, let's not get out of hand because they still have Robinson to play.
Yeah.
But you look who they opened with. Yeah, Stonebridge on the road. They had Braddock, Lee, all those teams. I mean, there was really no off week. And even West Potomac, when they caught them, now West Potomac's kind of struggled. They're 1-5. But when they caught them, they were red hot. Mm-hmm. And they were healthy. Now they're not. They're banged up. So, yeah, every game they've played, it really isn't the gigantic step up for most teams. As you see, you have teams like Herndon and Centerville who've gone out and collected some out-of-district wins. Nothing against those teams. It's just their out-of-conference schedules aren't as strong as Westfield. So Westfield, they've been playing at this level all year. Now we're seeing it pay dividends when they come out against a team like Oakton. Strike early and then never let up.
So what's up with Oakton then? They have their hot 1 week, they lose, and they've lost 2 straight. Is that right?
Yeah, they've struggled in the fourth quarter in recent weeks. I forget the stat. It's 4 of 13 passing for for Boone heading into this week in the fourth quarter in his last 3 games. So this is the young team. Remember, Paul, they won the regional title last year. They graduated everyone except for their offensive line. So it's replacing a lot of guys at the skill positions. They're still trying to plug in pieces. Luke Willis, every week you see him. 1 week he'll run for 12 times. Next week he's only returning punts. They got Alvaro Cabal coming in, and Jimmy Boone still trying to feel out, where he fits into this offense, what his role is going to be. I think, it's hard to call it a rebuilding year when they're going to go 6-4, 7-3, but I think that's what this is for Oakton. They're really trying to feel out what's going on. They're going to bring a lot of talent back next year, and I think next year's the year they're really going to contend for a region title. But 3-3, strong out-of-conference schedule, a good out-of-conference win against West Springfield. They'll still make the playoffs. They're fine.
Another team leading the Concord District is Herndon. They had a scare against Centerville, beating the Wildcats 35-30. Phil, before the show started, you were talking about how good this game was.
This is the best game I've seen this week, and maybe aside from Lee Westfield, the best game I've seen this season. Centerville was down in this game 35-14 with 8 minutes, 11 seconds left. Cam Walter scores on a 2-yard touchdown run. Now, then Centerville drive the length of the field. They got stopped. So Herndon has the ball. Centerville is down 35-21. Centerville blocks the punt, so it's 35-23, and then 4 plays later, they're in the end zone. Suddenly, it's 35-30. They recover the onside kick. They were 4 yards away from stealing this win, scoring the final 23 points unanswered. They did the same thing last week against Mount Vernon, except they were ahead. They were ahead 29-21, scored the final 21 points in that game. So this team's been playing great fourth quarters all season, which is not good news for teams in the Concord District. When you think you have them put away, they got a lot of talent. They're very young. Warren Denny, I had him in my top 3 receivers in the season. He did not disappoint in my rankings there. He looked great. Cam Walter's coming together, and a solid running game, top to bottom. This is a very good team. I mean, very good in the Concord District is going to get you about 4-6, but that's what you get. I think this team, next year and the year after, they're 2 years to really strike and make something happen.
All right, that is the Concord District. Monica, what else you have for us?
All right, well, now it is the time of the program where we are going to head over to the Players Lounge. BJ Kubarulis with the opportunity to catch up with a couple of players from the Lake Braddock football team to talk about their big win this week over Lee.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Players Lounge. I'm BJ Kubarulis, and this week I'm joined by 2 Bruins from Lake Braddock, not too far down the road from here. And in studio with me now is quarterback Michael Niebrick, and he's joined by the guy who protects him and keeps him safe, Cameron Kolb. At 6'6", 325 pounds, we had to build a special studio to get him in here tonight. So, Cameron, we'll talk a little bit about recruiting, what's going on this year with the Bruins, your role in the offense and defense. Michael, we're going to talk to you about a new system that has you throwing the football about 30 times a game, it seems like. Let's jump into the new system right away. You started running the new system about midway through last year, but then Coach Bill Renner, whose son Bryn was a heck of a quarterback at West Springfield and now at North Carolina, retired from his position with the Spartans and has now joined Lake Braddock, and then it has you throwing the football a lot more, which I'm sure you're very pleased with. Let's talk a little bit about adapting to that system and what are some of the changes you've had to make.
It's a little bit different because we started off last year. We were in the shotgun, but everybody was in tight, everybody was in the box, and we were just running the ball and pounding it. So it's a little bit different throwing the ball, 35 plus times a game. But it's a lot of fun. We have the personnel to do it, so it makes it a lot of fun, and we've been doing a pretty good job so far. And
you seem to be rushing for some yardage as well, and I think we could credit the big guy to your left for some of those yards, opening some big holes for you. Cameron Kolb, one of the bigger recruits, literally, literally one of the bigger recruits in the northern region. You've seemed to narrow your list lately. You're going to be visiting, I think you said, Penn State this weekend coming up. Let's talk a little bit about some of that recruiting to get started here. What is your list down to, or what are some of your options right now?
Right now for me, I have my list down to Penn State, Wisconsin, and UConn. I've been taking it slowly the whole time. I haven't been rushing into things. I've been going about it, and I'll be taking visits up to Wisconsin and UConn as well as Penn State this weekend. And I'm just going to try to find the right fit for me and the right kind of offense I want to play in.
All right, speaking of offense, you're doing a great job helping the offense this year. You guys are putting up a heck of a lot of points. Let's see, against Langley, you guys started the season, put up 38 points. I think that was kind of your, hey, here we are, your coming out party, if you will, as a new offense. This was a team that many had pegged to be a region title contender to start the season, and you guys are certainly living up to that. Let's talk a little bit about the start of the season. You guys are 4-2, 2-1 in the Patriot District. Cameron, you had a play there that could have had you guys at 5-1. Woodson looked like the quarterback's knee was down on the 2-point conversion. You helped kind of push the running back into him to make that tackle. However, the call was not made. You guys lose that game. You took it kind of hard. Tell me about how you took it, and then tell me about what you guys have done to come back from that loss.
Well, personally, I took it really hard. I had been on that play, as you said. I'd gone in thinking it was a field goal, so I was ready in my field goal stance. And we came in, I looked up, and the quarterback was back there. So I figured I'd just get that backfield as quick as I could. And from what I saw, I thought I knocked him down. But from what the ref saw, I guess it was another call.
Right.
But after that loss, our team really came together. And it's been feeling our defense, which I play a little bit on. And our offense has been trying to step it up for our defense.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the defensive shoes you're filling as well. You're playing on the D-line, and you had a key third down bat down against Lee to kind of stuff their final drive, and a big victory. Got you guys a lot of PowerPoints and really back up into the PowerPoint standings now. Lake Braddock is really pegged to get a home game if you guys continue to play the way you are in the playoffs. Mike, let's talk a little bit about what could be for this season. Speaking of playoffs, what do you guys expect? What are your expectations towards the end of the season?
Right now, of course, we expect district championship. We had the hard loss to Woodson, which we feel we should have won, but we've really rallied off that loss. So right now, after beating Lee, which we thought kind of to ourselves as a district championship, we got to move on in the Patriot District, right. And we got South County coming up on Friday, so that's another big game for us. So, of course, right now we want district championship is number one on our mind, and then once we make it into regional finals or regional playoffs, then we'll take it from there.
Let's put some of your numbers into perspective. You've thrown the ball 202 times, 9 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's okay. You're still a junior, still learning, but it means you like to throw the ball and you like to take risks. And I want to talk to you about that against South County because they got a guy that might make you pay for that. But almost 1,500 yards, just six games into the season. You've also rushed for almost 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. Okay, so you like to take some risks, right? You like to throw the football. Tell me a little bit about that, and you talk about South County's defense, one of the best defensive backs in the area, and Andre Simmons. You guys have a kind of a matchup coming up against him. I mean, do you expect to throw at him, or what are your expectations of him out there roaming in the back?
Our offense is designed to throw the ball. That's what we're going to do no matter who we play. Doesn't matter if Andre's out there. It just doesn't matter. We're going to throw the ball. So we're going to take risks. I'm going to shoot the ball down the field. We're going to be hitting the easy middle stuff. So we're going to take risks against any defense we play against.
Speaking of taking risks, you like to make your way in on those extra points. You've batted 4 of those down now, which is something that is pretty impressive at the high school level. And it also has Cameron, who we see here on our screen, in the Washington Post's current in-season All-Met, which is something new they're doing now at .com, which kind of tracks the All-Mets during the season, and that's something that has you really kind of standing out as your ability. Walk me through, if you had to, what's going through your mind when a kicker lines up and is trying to take that extra point. Give me the anatomy of an extra point block.
Well, what most people don't realize is when you get up there and the ball snaps, you have a little bit of time. Lots of people just go put their hands up right away. But what I like to do is get down there below all the guards and stuff, which is hard for me. But I've done it a few times now. And what you got to do is you got to get through the line first and then put your hands up, because you just put your hands up, any kicker's going to get over you, no matter how tall you are. And I'm pretty tall, so. And it's worked so far. I mean, I did a bunch of times last year, and I've done it a few times this year. Sometimes in critical times, like in the Westfield game, 1 by 1 point.
It's a pretty big play.
Yeah.
Want to talk to you about Cameron, having him in front of you like that. What's it like to know that you got a guy that's 6'6", 325-pound bowling ball in front of you that's pretty tough to move? I mean, you seem to be pretty well protected.
Yeah, the line's doing a great job this year. Cameron's doing a great job. It's real nice having him and especially Jack Phillips on the edge, who's about his size. So it's real nice to have them up there, but it does kind of get difficult sometimes seeing over them. But it's nice to have the protection. I'd take protection over visibility any day.
Cameron, so you're playing offense, defense, and you're in on special teams. Are they going to start handing the ball off to you as a fullback at any point? I know last year they did some of that.
Yeah, that was last year.
I think I even saw you throw a pass last year, if I remember.
Caught it.
And it was a completion,
Yep.
and it was a pretty nice spiral, too. Well
one
done.
for one, man.
That's a good career. Leave it at that.
Great career.
I want to thank the Players of the Week for joining me in studio here. Cameron Kolb, 6'6", 325 pounds. We'll be watching for him to make his college choice soon. And Michael Niebrick, a junior, still has some time in the northern region. I want to thank these two guys for joining me here in the Players Lounge. Now back to you, Monica.
All right, well, with that preview for what happened in the Patriot District this week, let's take a look at the standings after Week 6. So you see there with that loss that Lee suffered this week, there's now a three-way tie at the top of the Patriot District. Lee, Woodson, and South County all 5-1 overall, 2-1 in the district, and Lake Braddock knocking on the door. So let's talk a little bit more about Lake Braddock's win over Lee, because a huge win. You see what it did to the district standings, and Michael Niebrick, we saw him play against Woodson. He was phenomenal, but this was perhaps his best outing of the season. You see 229 passing yards, a passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns. Idris Augustus there a little banged up. That's why the numbers look a little low. But guys, this was a big win for Lake Braddock.
Monica mentioned that Woodson Lake Braddock game. We saw Connor Riley for Woodson, Michael Niebrick for Lake Braddock, and I said I'm looking at the 2 best quarterbacks in the region right now, Phil, and they've shown they are the 2 best quarterbacks in the region.
Yeah, I think Niebrick's numbers are a little skewed by the interception. He cannot get gun shy, though. In this offense, you have to be willing to take risky passes. And Michael, if you're watching, remember Bryn in his junior season, his first year running quarterback in this offense, he threw 12 interceptions. His senior year, he threw 3. So yes, 13 interceptions. I know BJ touched on it, and I saw his facial reaction to it. Kind of a sore spot. Don't worry about it. I mean, this is the first game this season without an interception. And you saw it. They beat previously unbeaten Lee, a team that came in with more power points than any team in the state, any division, 1 through 6, other than Battlefield. They were number 2 in the state in power points across the board. Lake Braddock gets the big home win. But Paul, true or false? I have a Lunchable before each show.
True.
True or false? I was the only one that picked Lake Braddock to win this game.
That is true as well.
Okay, let's get to those highlights. We pick things up first quarter. Jasmine Williams with the ball on the 2-yard line. This is their jumbo set that BJ was talking to them about a couple weeks ago. Missed field goal for Lake Braddock. Lee drives the length of the field. Jasmine Williams, he walks through the end zone, Paul, with his backpack full of lead weights. 2-yard touchdown run for Williams, 7-0 after 1. Kind of boring. Mid-second quarter, still 7-0, but that's when things got crazy. Michael Niebrick finding Mike Rezatar, Mike-to-Mike connection. 10-yard touchdown toss. We're knotted up at 7. Wasim Abbasi, though, recovered a fumble on the 3rd play of the ensuing Lee possession, giving Lake Braddock short field. You cannot do that because Donnie and Marie will burn you. Donnie and Marie Osman Mansoray, 7-yard touchdown run, 14-7 Lake Braddock, but Lee coming right back. There were 3 touchdowns in a 2-minute, 10-second span. Ball at midfield. Lee's got a deep threat now. If this is consistent, if Aaron Jackson can do this every week, teams around Division 5 are in trouble. 50-yard touchdown toss. Remember, he had the long 84-yarder last week against Annandale. He actually had a 74-yard pass called back last week, 14-13 after the failed pack. Lake Braddock, though, here's Niebrick's leg. This is what makes this kid special, his ability to run the football. 35 yards, Paul. He's the bomb like tick to the house. Makes it 21-13 with 5:20 left in the 3rd quarter, but you're facing Lee, and you know they're going to strike back. Now, this is a drive that Idris Augustus was injured on. After this drive, he only had 2 rushing attempts the entire game. Jasmine Williams, though, his 2nd touchdown run from 8 yards out, 2-point conversion, good. We're knotted up at 21, but with 3:11 left, I wish I could think of a 3:11 song off the top of my head. Michael Niebrick, 3-yard plunge, his 2nd. He finished 21 carries, 78 yards. Lake Braddock is up 28-21, and Emmanuel Adetunji. I usually don't put non-touchdowns in these highlights because we're so cramped for time, but this kid, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss on the defensive end. He was a man. Just devastated this running game and this passing attack. Outstanding game for Adetunji, anchoring that defensive line, which we'll talk about later. But Lake Braddock, 28-21, they moved to 4-2, and now, as Monica showed with those standings, there's a 5-way tie atop the Patriot District in terms of district wins and losses.
5 teams with 2-1 records, 3 teams with 5-1 overall records. Before the season, Phil, we had far and away Lake Braddock was the top-ranked team. We thought just the guys that had back, the one coach coming back to help out.
Who was that? I don't remember.
Maybe I don't know. But they're showing, they've beaten Lee now. Mm-hmm. They're coming back. They're coming back looking pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really taken our foot off the pedal. We still think this is one of those teams, one of the few teams that can contend with Robinson in the top D6. And again, you're going with a vastly different offense, a lot of different terminology, and you're plugging in, a kid that's a junior and ask him to do very different things. And every week he's showing more and more improvement, and that's the centerpiece of this offense, and a quarterback's ability to get rid of the ball quickly, make timely, smart decisions, know when to run, when to pass, when to start to run, and then pass. Very complicated offense, but they're showing right now we're not as dumb as we look. They're 4-2, and again, they're hot. The game against South County this week, which we'll talk about later, that could be for your Patriot District championship, and will definitely have huge implications on the Division 6 playoff picture. Lake Braddock, number 4 currently in power points.
That will be a fantastic game. I will certainly be there to watch that. Let's talk a little bit about South County. They took on West Springfield. Monica, what happened?
All right, well, South County, as you said, squaring off against West Springfield. This is another one of those teams right there at the top of the Patriot District, and South County coming up with the big win. Now, when everyone talks about South County, they talk a lot about Andre Simmons, as they should, but David Jordan, once again, coming up with a huge game. You see the 3 touchdowns there. Last week, we listed our top 3 running backs in the region, but David Jordan, one that I really like. I think you should definitely keep your eyes on him. South County showing that they are quite a force to be reckoned with, and I agree. I think that South County Lake Braddock game is going to be huge this week. West Springfield trying to counter Matt Prokop. You saw his numbers that he put up, the quarterback for West Springfield. You see a nice picture of him there, but it was just not enough, guys, to overcome South County.
When we talk about the Stallions, speaking of Lake Braddock, where we had them so high before, South County, kind of a sleeper team. We talk about all the stars in this region. Yes, there's Jordan, there's Vane, but what makes this team tick? Why are they so good so far?
Well, 2 things: outstanding defense and a great running game, and that'll give you a lot of success at a high school. Their defense is now number 1 in terms of points per game allowed in the Northern Region, D5 or D6, number 1. And this running game, when they get over 4 yards per carry, they're 5-0. Their one loss to Annandale, they were at 2.97 yards per carry, and they lost that game 7-6. Now, the wind was huge in this game. South County had double the yards per attempt when they were going with the wind than against it, but the defense held this offense. Now, granted, without Eric Schauter, Matt Prokop, it was kind of a one-trick pony, but he's still a good quarterback. TJ O'Connell, great receiver. He had 6 catches for $116 and a score. Held them without a touchdown until the 125 mark of this game. So they had to settle for 3 John McConnell field goals, and he's got a reliable leg. We'll talk about that later when we talk about our top kickers and defensive players in the area. But this defense got it done, and then David Jordan partying like it's 1993. 19 carries, 90 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Staying in the Patriot District with T.C. Williams having a huge victory over Annandale, 31-7. No one thought that was going to happen.
Well, and again, TC, they always scare everyone. They beat Oakton. They almost beat West Springfield. We were at the Braddock game. We were thinking, are they going to do it again? Mm-hmm. So you have to think this team's obviously talented. Cortez Taylor is one of the most dangerous kids in the region, and their defensive speed is second to none. Yes, Michael Niebrick, he threw the 3 picks against them. Mm-hmm. Part of that was the wet ball, but I think part of it was just the closing speed of the secondary. They returned 2 interceptions for touchdowns, had a 3rd called back, a 100-yard interception return by Kendrick Barnes called back. That's in addition to the 2 that counted, and that's all in the 3rd and 4th quarters. And then the rest of the way, Paul, just really held their offense in check. They actually had 3 touchdowns overall called back, so this actually could have been a little bit worse. TC had their best showing of the season, and now Woodson plays them next Saturday. You'll be there. Mm-hmm. I'll be there. So we'll see. Maybe they can scare Woodson like they have basically every other power in the Patriot District so far.
Patriot District with 3 teams with 5-1 overall records, 5 teams with 2-1 district records, shaping up to be a fantastic district race. But let's jump to our game of the week. Monica Moore will tell you all about Edison's big win over Yorktown.
Yes, our Verizon Fios game of the week this week was Edison versus Yorktown, and the big question was which one of the Angus Harpers was going to show up. Is it the one that had put up low rushing numbers, or is it the one that has torn apart defenses? Well, guys, let me give you a little bit of a hint. This highlight reel that you're about to see is brought to you by the number 15. All right, so let's take a look at it right here. You're going to see the first big play for Harper running through the defense. They're gaining lots of yards, being brought down by the Yorktown defense. And here you'll see another big play, and you're going to see so much of Angus Harper, great rushing plays. And one thing I do want to point out, because I talked to Vaughn Lewis about this before the game, and he did point out, yes, we've seen some games, here's Harper again, where he's had those low rushing numbers, but they've had a lot of injuries this season. They've had to make adjustments to the offensive line every week, and so that's one reason why you might see low numbers for Harper in some of those games. Here you see a nice play there. Yorktown, they did get on the board first, Cardillo scoring a touchdown, but then Harper takes over. This is a rushing touchdown by Barber. Barber, the quarterback, number 12, and then Harper, Harper, Harper all throughout the first half. The Yorktown defense cannot find a way to stop him, and you have to give a lot of credit to the Edison offensive line because Harper during the first half was able to do about everything that he wanted to do, and Yorktown not able to stop him. So you think that we're just focusing on this one player, but Harper had so many huge plays. He's going to end up, just to give you a little bit of a hint of how this turns out, with over 180 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. You see a field goal there by Dola, the kicker for Yorktown, and here you see a fumble. Edison getting the ball. A lot of costly mistakes for Yorktown during the second half were hugely problematic, and this is Christian Washington, number 1. We talked about him a bit last week. We think he's one of the best wide receivers in the region. I had him on my list, and you see there just rushing through everybody. You're going to see another play later on of Washington, but here's a great pass there to Krissick, number 8, in the end zone. That's the first of Krissick's 2 big plays. He got a little injured later on. Big play for him. Nottingham back, but throws the pick. That's Krissick right there recovering. As I said, he got a little banged up during the third quarter, but a huge night for him, and then a huge night there for the Edison defense coming up with the big sack. You see Nottingham's arm though, but Washington gets the pick. He races back. So Christian Washington came alive during the second half when the Yorktown defense was trying to focus a bit more on Harper. But here it is, Harper once again, another touchdown for Angus Harper. A huge night for that young man. Nottingham there finding the receiver. He definitely went to throwing during the second half, but then that's when the picks started happening. Just could not find an answer to what Edison was able to do all night. Christian Washington one more time, number 1 there you see running, finally knocked him out of bounds. But this one was just all Edison. Yorktown did not have an answer for the Eagles. We saw the Eagles falter early on in the season. This is Khalil Doles right here with a nice big run for Yorktown, one of the bright spots for them in this game. He's finally brought down. But like I was saying, Edison faltered early on against West Springfield. Has looked very strong since then. You see the 181 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns there for Harper. I got to speak with him and Edison head coach Vaughn Lewis after the game. Player of the game, Angus Harper, and Edison head coach Vaughn Lewis. Now, Angus, you ended up tonight with almost 180 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. Of those 4 touchdowns, which was the most memorable to you?
Probably the one where I broke on the sideline this way and then cut it back for the end touchdown. My receivers laid good blocks, my offensive line blocked well, and it was a touchdown. I just felt good about it.
Now, Yorktown got on the board first. You guys answered with 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, 2 by you. How important was it to regain the momentum?
Well, Coach Lewis stressed all week about how good of this team would be and how whoever wins this game would be district champions. So we knew that we had to get our momentum back in front of our home crowd, and that's what we did.
Now, it's really windy down here on the field tonight. Did that in any way affect the play?
No, because Coach Lewis and Coach Travis kept calling the runs, and so it didn't matter. We just kept running the ball.
And finally, I do want to give you a chance to talk about your offensive line, who had a great night tonight.
Oh, they really stepped it up. I mean, our offensive line has always been good, but they've come a long way, and I think they're going to continue to get. I know they're going to continue to get better, and we're going to progress as time goes on, and we should be very well going into Week 10, getting ready for the playoffs.
Coach, at halftime, you told me you were very pleased with your offense. What were you most pleased about during the second half?
Consistency. We ran the ball very well tonight, and we've been inconsistent running the football. Defensively, we played very well the second half. We were a lot more aggressive the second half on both sides of the ball, and that's what pleased me the most.
I know your running game was definitely working well, but one receiver that had that touchdown and at least one other really nice reception was Mark Krisak. I wanted to give you a little chance to talk about him.
Mark's a special person. We're very lucky at Edison because we have 5 or 6 outstanding athletes. Mark's one, Angus. We have Washington. We have so many athletes. It makes it tough for other defenses because we spread them out, and helps us in the secondary so we can do things up front to try to get a pass rush on. We're very fortunate here at Edison High School to have people like Mark Krisak.
Well, Coach Angus, congratulations, big win tonight. Okay, so both of these teams have been bitten a bit by the injury bug this season, but guys, Edison has Barber back, their offensive line is shaping up, and they look very strong right now.
Oh, Edison's legit. They've really come along nicely. A nice big win. Phil, pretend like he's playing Madden here in the studio during watching those highlights, hitting the
That's
X button.
That is a true story.
X2 square, L2 to give the ball back to the ref. I mean, Angus Harper had a night, 19 carries, 102 yards in the first quarter.
9 carries, 102 yards in the first quarter. My handwriting's too sloppy on your shot sheet. 9 carries, 102 yards in the first quarter. This team racked up 307 rushing yards, and they got down first. I mean, you saw Eric Cardillo come out, 2-yard touchdown run to cap a long play, an 80-yard scoring drive for Yorktown. But then the Edison responds, 2 plays, they get right back on the board, riding Angus Harper the whole way. I mean, this kid's only got 1 scholarship offer. I think if he continues to put up these kind of numbers, those will come in. I was talking to you and Monica during the highlight package during the interview that we were showing. He had 181 rushing yards and 20 receiving yards in this game. 181 and 20. He also had 181 and 20 against Mount Vernon, so he's putting up symmetrical numbers, getting a little bit predictable. And Monica touched on before the highlight, which Angus Harper would he see? And in the loss to West Springfield and then the close win to Oakton, he was under 40 yards in both those games. Every other game he's been over 180. Mm-hmm. So I think we get a really good indication early of what kind of night we're going to have. You guys were there. You saw first quarter just blown away. And then you saw me Saturday at the South Lakes Madison game. You said, I hope I have this kid in my top 3 running backs. And if not, you should have. He's nasty.
I didn't, and I'm wrong for that. You got Angus Harper, Levi Barber, Chris Washington. I mean, no surprise, this team is one of the best teams in Division 5 yet again because they just have that talent. All right, so that's our game of the week. Monica is going to set us up for the Liberty District now.
All right, so over to the Liberty District now. This district boasts our other undefeated team, Stonebridge, still at 6-0, 3-0. We'll talk about their game a little later on. You see where the other teams stand right now in the Liberty District, but the one team that we have to lead off with is the team that is very hot right now, and that is South Lakes. They squared off against Madison this weekend. It was homecoming for the Warhawks, as we talked about last week, and South Lakes spoiled it. You see the numbers there for Jawan Jones with 108 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. We had him on the program last week, and you see why he's quickly becoming one of the most talked about backs in the region. And then Sean Rana, again, having a great night with her afternoon, really. It was a 3 o'clock game, so 125 passing yards that the quarterback, Sean Rana, put up. Madison tries to answer with Joe Corrigan and then Tavin Thomas there with that touchdown, but just not enough. Homecoming is spoiled. And guys, South Lakes definitely looks like they can give Stonebridge a run for their money in the Liberty District.
Philip Murphy, is it true or false you have a lunchable for every show?
I absolutely have. I had turkey, ham, and cheese today.
True or false you did not pick South Lakes?
Well, neither did you. None of us did.
Nobody picked South Lakes. Well, we thought Madison's going to have big 50th anniversary. We thought Madison was going to have a good time. You see the QB there, Sean Rana, had a fantastic day.
Teams that we invite in are now 2-0 the week after coming in. So, I mean, people should be knocking on the door to come talk to BJ in the Players Lounge. And so I guess that bodes well for Lake Braddock this coming weekend against South County. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But, yeah, we knew South Lakes was good. But my logic behind picking Madison, and I seem to be wearing the color of Oakton and Madison, 2 teams that lost. My logic for picking Madison was that McLean would beat Madison. Madison would beat South Lakes, and South Lakes would beat McLean. It'd be a little triumvirate for teams going for second place, and then Stonebridge would stay kings of all. Well, South Lakes is showing us that Week 10 game against Stonebridge is going to have a little bit more on the line than maybe we thought coming into the season as we go to the highlights here. First quarter, Paul, this is the battle of birds that don't exist, Seahawks and Warhawks. Jawan Jones, 2-yard touchdown run, making it 7-0 on the first South Lakes drive. We're on a 4 for 4 on that drive. He was 2 for 2 on this one. 28 yards to A.J. Price, even with pass interference. Jawan Jones capping it. 4-yard touchdown run in. South Lakes off and running 14-0 at the break. But Madison top-ranked defense in Division 5 coming into this game. Charlie Pence there with a sack, getting some help from Glenn Metz, Kevin Sampson. A lot of big names on this defense. But second half, Kevin Sampson blocks the punt, and Joe Corrigan, you want me on that ball, you need me on that ball. Recovers it in the end zone, 14-7 to Madison. 14-14 at that point. Madison now a drive to tie. Tyler Wilkinson catches the screen, appears to convert the 3rd and 14, however, called back for a block in the back. Missed field goal by James Devins by inches, and then here's Jawan Jones. Paul, we have a streaker. Runs straight ahead, and actually it's kind of ironic. We won't touch on why. 59-yard touchdown run for Jawan Jones, proved your game winner. 17 carries, $108. Sean Rana also, we didn't mention him really aside from the 2 perfect scoring drives. 8 for 10 passing for 125. And 80% of his passes, 12.5 yards per pass attempt. You really can't ask much more from a quarterback that's in a run-oriented system. When you have that much of a threat with him throwing the Price out wide and Antonio Jenkins in them, This team 5-1, and you look at their schedule. I mean, that game against Stonebridge is going to be for the district title.
Phil, we were both at this game. Talked to Coach John Ellenberger after the game. He said that Sean Reina is one of the best quarterbacks that he's ever had at South Lakes. Very workmanlike. He's not making many mistakes. He's getting the ball to where it needs to be. Juwan Jones having huge days. Yeah, I agree. This Stonebridge in the Week 10, South Lakes against Stonebridge, it's going to be a huge game.
Yeah, that's if Madison doesn't spoil it first. But yeah, South Lakes, the last time they beat Madison in 2002, that's also the last time they were regional champions in Division 5.
And I think that Stonebridge is actually beatable. They did win again against Fairfax to improve to 6-0, but Monica, tell us why I think that Stonebridge is beatable.
Well, Fairfax almost able to pull it off. You see the numbers there. So Stonebridge winning by 8 points. Marcus Harris, he is one of the premier running backs in the region. We've been talking a lot about running backs, but that's because there are just so many good ones in the northern region. He does not disappoint week after week. But a player that I am very high on is Jack Beckert. You see the numbers that he put up, 133 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and the recipient of all of those passing touchdowns was Alex Young. So guys, Fairfax definitely challenged Stonebridge, so Stonebridge is beatable. So it's going to be interesting as we see how the Liberty progresses.
When we say they're beatable, they haven't been beaten yet. Yeah. Mickey Thompson still has that team winning year in and year out. But Phil, my Rebels almost pulled through with it.
Yeah, Stonebridge 31-0 all-time in Liberty District play, and this team, we came in. They beat Marshall by 28 points last week. That was their third closest district win since 2005. So you think this team's just totally untouchable, but Fairfax, as we'll see, give them a little bit more of a fight than we thought. But first quarter, turnovers, Fairfax's bugaboo again. In punt formation, and snap. Ball goes over the punter's head, and Ryan Loudermilk recovers it in the end zone. There's too many punts. I'm just overloaded with puns with Loudermilk. Stonebridge up 7-0 after the first quarter, but Fairfax coming right back. Early second, Jack Beckert, as Monica mentioned, 133 passing yards, all 3 TDs going to Alex Young, and Young's got 99 problems. That hitch ain't one. 16-yard touchdown for Alex Young there, ties things up at 7 late in the second quarter. But Stonebridge drives the length of the field, and with 45 seconds left in the quarter, direct snap goes to Kyle Gouveia. He's looking end zone, but Paul, he's got that Gouveia nose for the end zone. 14-yard touchdown run for Kyle Gouveia makes it 14-7 at the recess. Now, early second quarter, Marcus Harris on this drive, 5 carries, 75 yards, and this 19-yard touchdown run. Paul, he's not too heavy, not too light. Gets the corner, 19-yard touchdown run makes it 21-17. But Fairfax not going away, and that would be the theme in this game. Beckert and Young. This team, remember, up through the first 4 weeks of the season, or first 2 weeks of the season, they only had 4 completions, none longer than 6 yards. Forget about that. Young's putting up a good case for first-team all-district receiver. 30-yard touchdown reception makes it 21-14 in favor of Stonebridge. But the A train is headed to Fairfax. Adrian Thomas, 22-yard touchdown run, makes it 28-14. Fairfax not dying though. Young on the day, 6 carries, 94 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and you don't need to be a scholar to realize that third touchdown's coming right here. 28-20, but this was the point of contention in the game. Minute 30 seconds left. Here's your onside kick. Fairfax lining up for the onside kick. A minute 30 left. This is the deciding play of the game. Alex Young on the hop goes and recovers it at the Stonebridge 44-yard line, but take a second look. Referees throw a flag for offside. Paul, give me your honest opinion. Was he offside? At least I'd say 2 yards behind.
Yeah.
Probably should have counted as a good recovery. Stonebridge gets the ball, kneels out the clock, and gets the win. That's just still to say they would have to go down and score, but it's kind of unfortunate when a game is decided in that scenario. But still, Stonebridge 8 points. They get the scare. They get Madison next week, though. And again, Madison, one of the top defenses in Division 5 now. Actually, the top defense still in Division 5, one of the top in the region, but Stonebridge, number 1 scoring offense in Division 5, held to 28 points by Fairfax.
Before this season started, I made 2 startling predictions. I said that South Lakes would win at least 5 games. Phil, how many wins does South Lakes have?
They have 5.
Through 6 weeks. So, that turned out all right. I said Fairfax would win at least 3 games.
You're actually boasting about picking a team to win 3 games in a season?
Hey, I said, Fairfax, I'm going to give them 3.
You're on a huge limb going 3 and 7.
Well, that Concord district, those last couple years in the Concord district were tough. I said 3. They have 2 wins already, played Stonebridge tough, still have Thomas Jefferson and Marshall on their schedule. So I like to go on a limb, obviously, Phil.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to take a break from football right now. Monica is going to jump into her favorite sport, volleyball.
And before I do that, I do have to say, Paul, that when we get to the pick'ems from last week, I don't think anyone on this program should be bragging about making predictions. But as you said, let's get over to volleyball. Now, for those who watch this segment, you know I normally start out with my top 5, but because there were some upsets this week that you may not have been expecting, I thought I wouldn't spoil it with the top 5. We'll start with those upsets. So Westfield squaring off against Chantilly, and you see Westfield defeating Chantilly 3-1. You see the scores there. It was close in the beginning, but Westfield able to hang on. Now this was huge because Chantilly has been on an 8-match winning streak in which they have only lost 1 game. Westfield, on the other hand, entered with a 4-9 record and were on a 4-game losing streak. But we've talked about that tough schedule that Westfield has been playing, and it paid off. You see Emily Kohler there and Emma Stewart both with huge kills all throughout the match, and then Gabby DiVincenzo with 18 assists. They're great setter. So Westfield defeating Chantilly. Chantilly has not lost since they lost to Flint Hill. Those are the only 2 losses of the season so far for Chantilly. But I said upset, so let's talk about the other big upset from this past week. Robinson squaring off against South County. Some people may not think this is an upset. They may have had Robinson higher in their rankings than I did, but you see Robinson defeating South County, but look at those scores. This was a tight contest the entire match. Robinson coming out on top, defeating the Stallions. So now I will reveal my rankings and show you where it has all ended up. Now I've still left Chantilly at the top of the bunch there. I think they are fantastic. They did falter against Westfield, but I'm still going to leave them there. Some people might take issue with that. And then Stonebridge now moving up to the number 2 position. Have a lot of confidence in this Stonebridge team. Very big on them. But Robinson moving above South County with that win. Now Stonebridge beat Robinson, so that explains a little bit the rankings as well. And then Herndon coming off of 2 losses, losing to Langley and then losing to Flint Hill, which is the team that beat Chantilly and the team that beat Westfield last night, 0-3. All right. Well, before we leave volleyball, we've been talking about some of our top players for football from around the region, so I could not leave off the volleyball players. And so 2 players from each district that you see there, and those stats are just for the month of September. And looking at some of those, you see who these great players are. Susie Murat, first of all, from Robinson with those 323 kills, and again, that is just for the month of September. And then another one I want to point out to you is Elise Richardson, 396 digs for Langley. Okay, well, let us now segue back into football, moving over to the National District, and we'll show you the National District standings. Edison, we've already talked a bit about them. Other big winners this week, and let's move over to one of them now, which is Washington Lee squaring off this week against Stuart. And guys, they are on a hot streak, 3 games in a row, and a big reason is David Roddy coming back from that skateboarding injury and coming up huge against Stuart.
Thanks, Monica. Also want to mention Wakefield having that big, Falls Church having a big win, overtime win over Wakefield. But I'm just going to jump right into these top 10 standings real quick because we want to show you that Robinson remains in the number 1 spot, 40 points. Last week they were number 1. Stonebridge moves into number 2, and Woodson and South County both move up. Other notables, McLean and Herndon tied for number 10, and Lake Braddock now at number 5 with 25 points.
So how does this happen? Lake Braddock, Woodson, and South County all tied for 5th last week. They all win. They all get separated. Braddock's the bottom of those. Then they beat Lee. They were
4-2 record. I don't know.
I guess so. I guess that's a good point. And power points are behind Woodson and South County. You got Robinson 1, Woodson 2, South County 3, Braddock 4. So I guess that is reflective of that.
This week we also have a new ranking, and that's the top 5 plays of the week, courtesy of Mr. Phil Murphy in Digital Sports.
All right, number 5, kick things off. Actually, we're starting with number 1. The pick 6 in the TC Williams game. Going deep, here's Israel Richardson, the chosen one. These pair of pick 6 is the top play of the week. Israel Richardson going 69 yards back to the crib, weaving his way through the defense. Just one of 2 pick 6s on the day. Paul, when I'm picking top 10 plays or top 5 plays or whatever, it's hard to distinguish between 2 blocked punts and 2 interception return for touchdowns. It's kind of like distinguishing between Megan Fox and Jessica Biel. Megan Fox, clearly, so we go with the interception return for touchdowns. Damian Benton gets that one from 50 yards. Actually had a 100-yarder called back by Kendrick Barnes. Here are the block punts. This is number 2. First, Ryan Sweet going in, block that kick. Ashton Moss, you saw this in the highlight. Number 2 play of the week, Ashton Moss getting in, and since it's 2, it's got to be a 2-pack. Dylan Ryden Doty gets on it, and Nick Grinnup's the wrestles it away from the Oakton blocker there. Here's number 3. We mentioned David Rowdy Roddy coming back to the lineup. Only his second game back. He had a big play last week, and then here, 81-yard kickoff return to open up the second half and open up the lead for Washington Lee from 17-14, 24-14. W&L goes on to win 34-21. They are your current 8 seed in the Division 5 playoff picture, knocking Stewart out of that spot. Number 4, we have a 4-pack of touchdowns from Angus Harper. 4-pack of touchdowns. He went on the day, 21 carries, 181 yards, 4 TDs. That one from 33 yards away. Then a smidgen later in the game, first play of the closing quarter, it's 28-10. Paul, if you add 7 to 28, what do you get? 35-10. Edison goes on to win 42-10, winning their 20th straight National District game. And here's that overtime win. This is not the play in overtime, but Marcus Harvey, watch how many players he drags into the end zone. Got 3 on him. Kid grabbing down his face mask. There was a personal foul face mask on his play. Drags players into the end zone. That's your number 5 play. Falls Church takes it at home 28-27, keeping Wakefield out of the win column in overtime. With a blocked extra point, they won that game on.
This can't be stressed enough. Mr. Phil Murphy watches every single minute of every single game, so that is your definitive top 5 plays.
From 1 to 5.
Let's go to the picks, though, because we didn't have a very good week at all. You can see Phil pulling up the rear, but getting 2 out of 5, picking Lake Braddock, the only one to pick Lake Braddock.
I'm an alumnus. That's part of it. No, it's not. I thought the size, I said last week when we were doing this, that the size of Lake Braddock would be the difference, but Lee would still get 200 rushing yards. Both those things happen, so I love myself. But I was in last place. People are coming back to me. I mean, I was trying to give you guys some distance, just kind of trail off. Mr. Byron Joseph Kubarulis over there, 1 and 3. Paul, you don't even know how to pronounce your last name. You're 1 and 4. Monica struggled. Would someone listen to me for once in a while, Paul?
Apologies to South Lakes, TC Williams, Westfield. It's a tough week. What are you gonna do? But let's look at next week, because you know I'm gonna bounce back and have a great week. You just know it. Let's see, Westfield at Robinson. We all pick Robinson.
I'll pick Robinson.
South County at Lake Braddock. I'm picking South County. We're all high on Lake Braddock. This is my sleeper upset of the week. I like the Stallions.
The reason I'm picking Lake Braddock, again, South County's 5-0 when they rush for over 4 yards a game. 0-1 when they don't, and this can be very tough against this defense, number 1 ranked defense not number 1 ranked statistically, but probably in terms of personnel, the best defense in the region. We'll talk about that in a second. But Braddock's given up over 200 yards rushing each of the last 2 weeks, so it is possible. South County can run the ball well. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think the first to 21 wins that one.
We all think Stonebridge will win, and half think Stewart will win, half
Coin
think
flip in the National District.
Yorktown will win. Last week we talked about our top 3 offensive and in different positions players at the midway point. Monica is going to take us through our top 3 defensive players.
All right, and before I do that, perhaps the person having the biggest week on the pick'ems was me, because I'm the one who picks the games to pick, and I picked ones that were really tough to pick. All right, so moving on, let us now reveal some of our top 3s for defense, starting off with our linebackers. Now, guys, I have one name on my list others don't have. That's Collie from over at Edison. Admittedly, I obviously saw him play on Friday, but he's leading the Eagles in tackles. And Dylan Doty, I've spoken about him on the program. But, guys, tell me about your linebackers.
I do like your pick of Collie. He had to come in and replace Stephon Robertson, who led the team in tackles for 3 straight years. So he has had to take on a big role, and that defense has looked solid in the last couple weeks. It's so hard when you cast the net as wide as we do. 30 teams, how many state titles, how many straight state title appearances by the Concord District? We have to narrow it down to 3, but take a look at all of our lists. We all have Lighty at the top, Potatoes, O'Brien, Lighty at the top. Eric Leeson getting a lot of love from that top-ranked defense. He's one of the, a couple, 1AAs are looking at him, and I have Joey DeSantis. I think he's, first-team All-District and first-team All-Region caliber linebacker, and anchoring that turnaround in his senior season of a team that, in the last 2 seasons has allowed 51 points per game in the playoffs. They're one of the better defenses now in the Patriot District, which is saying something because there are a lot of solid teams out there.
Interestingly enough, me and Phil's picks are exactly the same. It's just great minds think alike.
I know. Great minds. So let's move on to what's next, Paul.
Defensive backs.
So these are interesting. Again, Andre Simmons, the highly touted commit from Vanderbilt. This is not a shot at him by me having him 3. I'm going to justify. Andrew Leonard, pound for pound, is the best football player in the Northern region. pound for pound best football player in the Northern Region. The kid does everything for them defensively. He's a returning first-team All-Region player, one of only 3 underclassmen to be first-team All-Region player. And then Thomas Stickford, how could you not put a kid on the list with 4 interception return for touchdowns? So Leonard 1, Stickford 2, Dre 3. I have not forgotten about Dre. Did not forget about Dre. Paul, your picks are the same. BJ, like Donovan Taylor over at Lee. And Monica, same list as us, but she respects the pick sixes a little bit more.
Well, he finds a way to the end zone, but Poythress told us that he's the luckiest kid in the world.
Well, then he also told us a team is mad if they're absolutely crazy if they throw on his half of the field.
Oh, most definitely. Let's jump into the defensive lines now. Monica, Lake Braddock, Robinson, and Oakton. Me and Phil, we like Stonebridge.
Giving Stonebridge some love. Yes, they went 8 quarters without allowing a point. Again, those are two teams with a combined 0-10 record currently in Marshall and Jefferson. But when we first did this, I sent Monica my list of defensive linemen. My number 1 D lineman, it's the best player in the region no one's heard of. Andrew Embry from Marshall. The kid is an absolute savage. Ask any team he's played. Ask Stonebridge, ask South Lakes. You watch him on tape. He's one of the few players that pops, and that's very hard for a defensive player to do. He's looking at VMI. I think they're insane if they don't offer him a full ride for football. The kid is an absolute monster. It's just a shame he's on an 0-5 team and he's not going to get a lot of love in the all-region meetings, but you watch him on tape, he's the best out there.
Monica, what about our kickers and punters?
Yes, last but not least, we'll show you the kickers and punters. You see there, Devin's getting a lot of respect from all of us. Amaral from there, Mount Vernon getting some respect from Paul and Phil over there, and then John McConnell from West Springfield rounding out the bunch. All right. Well, Phil, I think you have one more thing you want to say about the kickers and punters, so what do you have for us?
I do, and again, justify this list. James Devins, first-team All-Region player last year. Colin Amaro, I watched his clips on YouTube today, his mid-season clips. He in the game against Hayfield at halftime, he hit a field goal from 60 yards and then hit one from 62 yards. This kid, he's from Mount Vernon. He's not going to get a lot of opportunities in the games this season, but it's going to be tough. So it's going to be tough for him to get a lot of all-region notion. But in terms of talent, I put him right up there. McConnell this season 6 for 7 on field goals, including 3 against South County last Friday.
Big week, Monica. Big week.
Absolutely, and looking forward to those games that we picked for next week. Hopefully we'll do a little better for you. All right, well, before we go, again, definitely want to thank the folks that make our program possible at CCI Screen Printing and then Craig Sturbutzel for those great photos that you saw tonight. You can get copies of our program at Pressbox Video, and our website is www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Again, become a fan of this program on Facebook and send us any story ideas or suggestions to our email address. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with everything you'll want to know from around the region.